Hi guys, at this point I don't fucking care whoever watches my channel because I just want to yap. And anyways, today I'm going to yap about normal people. Of course, that show is my whole fucking personality. Like, what the fuck you mean? I'm still not recovered by that show, by the way. And I watched that in like I don't know, 2020, I guess. I don't know. Was it even out by that time? Let me check. Because what the fuck you mean? That is crazy. Because I had read the book and like, oh yeah, it was out in 2020. Because I read the book like way earlier than the show came in, and I'm still not over it. I still revisit that show and that book, but like the show, it has stayed with me like long enough than any other show has, because if y'all know me, my favorite movie is The Notebook, and I but Normal People is like way closer to me than The Notebook. I don't know why, but it's like when you finish that show or when you finish the book, you're going to have this feeling of like just staring into the void and not knowing what the fuck did I just read, because I constantly cried for like 2 or 3 days after reading the book, and the show is like way worse, but like so greatly adapted to the book. But yeah, and I think that's why the story is something to me. It's not about like something dramatic happens in the show where you're like and you're crying over it. It's just like it's very emotionally supreme, I would say. And the strange thing that is on the surface is the same thing. Not actually anything too much happens, really. There are no huge plot twists, and there aren't any dramatic confrontations happening, or like any real drama happening in any episode. It's just mostly just two people growing up, misunderstanding each other a lot, and then still finding their way back to each other and then drifting apart again. And but somehow that is crazy, but somehow it feels like so intense when you're watching it. It's really different than most love stories I've ever seen. I don't even know if I should call it a love story, but I'm fucking going to. Um, by the way, if you have not watched it, if you want to get spoiled, the story comes from Normal People, a book by Sally Rooney, and a show is based on this book, which follows two characters, which are Connell Waldron and Marianne Sheridan. And they meet in school, and from the very beginning there's this quiet understanding between them that feels almost very immediate, but still it's there from the very start, and they see each other in the way that most people, or like other people, don't see them as. And that's what makes this relationship really, really complicated from the very beginning, but like it's great because being truly seen by someone can be both very comforting but very terrifying, I would say. And one of the things I love about this story is how honest it's about awkwardness of love. Because in most romantic stories, characters are clearly experiencing what the fuck is expressing their feelings, and it's like clear out there, loud love confessions, the Bridgerton love confessions, by the way. But when it comes to this story, they say the wrong thing, or they don't say nothing at all. Like, you know how bad that might be. But that feels really painfully real. And so much of the tension between Connell and Marianne doesn't come from like betrayal or like big dramatic moments in the relationship. It just comes from silence, from insecurity in the relationship, and from the things they assume about each other but never actually say out loud. And Connell, he always worries about not being good enough for Marianne, and Marianne believes she's fundamentally unlovable. Hardcore relate, to be honest. I relate with both of these characters at the same time, and that's, I don't know what that says about me, but whatever. Um, but those quiet beliefs really shape them and really shape the way they treat each other, I would say. And what makes this show so moving is that neither of them is like intentionally cruel. They hurt each other, but usually it's because they're struggling with their own sense of self. You know what I mean? And I think that's why so many people feel personally affected by this story, because it captures something very, very real about young adulthood, the period where you're like still figuring out who you are, and while also trying to love someone else or understand someone else. And sometimes you can't do both at the same time, and I guess that's the beauty of it. But one of the moments that stayed with me really long after the show, and it still haunts me, is where Connell kisses Marianne's shoulder. It's such a tiny moment, like nothing dramatic, and there's no big like love confession in that scene, but it feels incredibly intimate to me, and there's something about the gentleness of it and the quietness of that gesture that says more about their connection than any speech could ever do, I guess. But yeah, it's not just about physical attention, it's just familiarity, it's comfort, it's the kind of tenderness that would only exist between like two people who know each other deeply. And I think that's why that moment stuck with me like so much, because their relationship is actually built on moments like that: small gestures, quiet conversations, and shared silences. Shared silences, yes. And another thing the story actually captures really, really beautifully is the loneliness. Both Connell and Marianne, they feel disconnected from the world around them in different ways. Connell, he struggles with his sense of belonging and his mental health, and Marianne grows up in an environment where she feels unloved and misunderstood all the time. And when they finally find each other, there's a sense of recognition, like they finally met someone who understands the way they see the world. But even that connection isn't enough to solve everything, really, because love doesn't magically fix your insecurities around it. So in fact, sometimes it exposes them even more, your insecurities, your doubts about your own self and about your person. But what I find fascinating about normal people is that it doesn't try to simplify relationships. It doesn't pretend that love automatically leads to happiness. It shows how two people can actually really deeply care about each other and like still struggle to be together. And that's probably why the story feels so fucking haunting to me. It doesn't give you a clean emotional resolution or like an end. Instead, it leaves you with this feeling that Connell and Marianne will probably always be connected in some way, even if their lives move in different directions, which happens a lot in the show if you have watched it. And but the greatest part is they've shaped each other permanently. And maybe that's what makes the story feel so fucking real. Because in life, not every important relationship you have is going to last forever. And let me tell you, that's okay. And you would probably roll your eyes at me right now and being like, but it's really okay. Some people might enter your life for like a certain period of time and change you in ways that you would never fully understand. Or maybe you would understand later, but it's okay. You can still like move on from it. But the impact they have, the way they have shaped you, it's going to stay for a really long time, I would say. And I think that's why I keep thinking about the story every day. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm always like reposting things about like Connell and Marianne and their story. But I'm obsessed, okay? But not because it's like dramatic or like anything shocking happened in the show, but because it captures something very quiet, unnoticed, very human, something very human about love. It shows how two people can deeply be intertwined even when they're not together. And somehow that really feels honest than the perfect, happy endings we're used to watching or seeing in cinema. And personally, as a lover girl, I'm a big fan of happy endings, but I wouldn't want to spoil you if you've not watched what's the ending of the show, but I think I've just said enough at this point. But maybe that's why Normal People is like feels less like a typical romancy, cutesy movie, but more like a memory. The kind you like keep revisiting long after the story's over. I think that's what Normal People is to me. But yeah, I guess that's the yapping for today's video. I'm trying to do this more often, but that's it for now. See you in the next one. I love you guys. Thanks for hearing me yap. Just if you watch the show, please comment down below. Tell me your reviews about it. I don't know. Just do that. Anyway, see you in the next one. Bye.